I've spent the better part of 15 hours over the last week being consumed by the pre-release build of Yomi 2, and whether or not it'll have the same effect on you is going to depend on your capability to look past the earliness of its early access. Its blend of card game and 2D fighter is currently content light. Early adopters will be met with a game that needs to be enjoyed for its skeleton and not its meat. But my willingness to do that was because of how healthy that skeleton is. Yomi 2 takes the broad concept of its predecessor and its physical analog and modifies their formula in meaningful ways, simultaneously creating a rule set that's both more intuitive and also more mechanically interesting. Couple that with a higher level of visual production and a better UI, and you're left with a system that's compelling regardless of your history with the franchise. I admit, I have my preferences. Yomi 2 meets me at a weirdly specific overlap of my interest in all things dorky card game and a nascent appreciation for fighting games despite sucking at them. Yomi 2 is best understood not only as a game but as the realization of a concept. Developer Serlin Games has a body of work that spans digital and physical mediums yet mostly revolves around his stance in an eternal fighting game debate: motion inputs, or a lack of them. You might recognize these Yomi characters from Fantasy Strike, famously the 2D fighter without motion inputs. Any honest analysis of that game, or even any read of an interview done by Serlin Games founder and ex-fighting game pro David Serlin, would leave you with an understanding of his fighting game philosophy. None of the pro players are missing their motion inputs anyway, so they weren't needle movers on separating the wheat from the chaff regardless, just excluding the worst of the chaff from ever trying. And that matters here for reasons more than you think, because Yomi not only predates Fantasy Strike, but is also the logical extension of those same concepts. So what you get is a game that breathes fighting game decision making and skill with its whole chest, despite being a totally separate genre. Sure, you're still playing cards from a hand, but doing so demands understanding of a fighting game verb list, including terms like unsafe on block and linker. Each round starts off with a rock, paper, scissors match between your choice of a throw, block, or strike respectively, the successful result of which will provide a different boon like being able to draw cards or upgrade into a combo. In principle, that's nothing new to this sequel specifically, but where Yomi really earns that too is in some subtle design tweaks, manifested most dramatically at your turn opening throw, block, strike decision. There's always been mechanisms preventing this from being a blind guess. Grapplers are going to lean on their high damage throws more than other fighters are, and everyone is going to be predisposed to block more often at low health or even low hand size, given that successful blocks are your most reliable way to draw new cards. But one small change teases out a ton of new information you get to base that decision on, and that's the turn opening option to exchange. You get a free manual mulligan each turn, getting to swap out any card in your hand with a specific basic card from your discard pile. It's a level of authorship uncommon in card games and here to replace a specific mechanic dropped from Yomi 1. Each card no longer serves a dual purpose to be played multiple ways, and even blocks themselves have been split into high and low blocks respectively. It's a level of versatility that the cards themselves have lost but the rules have gained, and the hidden genius in this swap is the need to show your opponent the card you're fishing for. It's a requirement to telegraph your intent that lets your opponent change how they want to play, and you can do the same. But it can just as easily be used to telegraph a false intent. If you're at low health and fishing for a block, your opponent may feel safe moving in for a throw, but hit him with a quick jab instead and you may be able to parlay that into a massive combo to get back into the game. It is exhilarating, and manages to retain the unpredictability it needs to remain exciting while also giving you more tools to gain and give information, and when it works you feel real smart. But in the near decade since Yomi's original launch, this sequel has taken other influences from the fighting game landscape too, even from some unlikely sources. Yomi 2 uses a gem system, not dissimilar to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, letting you accent your playstyle with a fighter-agnostic gem that adds a few key cards to their deck, letting you cover some of your chosen fighter's weaknesses or even double down harder on their strengths. The entire system comes together in a way that's intuitive yet deep, and its thrills feel authentic to the fighting game pedigree. You can play zoners who apply poison then maintain distance as it ticks down. You can play aggressive rushdown characters that expend their entire hand in a single combo. It's the decision making of a 2D fighter codified into card game rules text, and its shift in genre has encapsulated a lot of that enjoyment. And I think part of how it nails that feel goes beyond its technical rules. The cards are brought to life with animations, they strike, throw, and block each other with physicality, and the dopamine release of subsequent strikes landing is present as it would be in any true fighting analog. It's not always a seamless look, you can feel art asset quality shift within a combo from card art sourced at different points in Yomi's lifecycle, but it's a step up from Yomi 1, and enough to sell the illusion of a fight. A fighting game mode list with both online and pass-and-play multiplayer are present. The former I was able to test during the pre-release period and had no issues with, despite the fact that the current state of the game lacks most of the meaningful stat tracking I was expecting from something that can be played so competitively. But Yomi 2 doesn't just serve a hyper-competitive audience. The introduction of a formal career mode may be one of my favorite additions, even if it presently leaves little to be evaluated other than its promise. It's a loose connective tissue to warrant what's effectively dolled up bot matches, but it provides a better incentive than Yomi 1 did. The bots put up a decent fight, and despite their inability to be part of the mind games that make the best Yomi plays tick, the smart inclusion of an intent percentage graph helps you make informed risks regardless. Win X games at Y locations so you can move on to the next or enter a tournament, with a fake virtual Twitter cheering you on as you gain infamy moving from local to local. The UI implies that we've got around 15% of a hypothetical 1.0's location quantity, so any enjoyment you could gather out of the current state of the career is despite what it offers and not because of it. But that ignores Yomi's true strength. Above all, Yomi 2 is a game whose content infancy betrays its system's maturity, and despite what it technically offers as a game being true to its early access label, the mechanics that govern it aren't. And that's because it's a decade-old philosophy made playable, an incredible refinement of its predecessor and an actualization of concepts that have traveled across the developer's entire library. But they've never been realized as strongly as they have been here. Yomi 2 is beautifully simple yet meaningfully deep, and it serves both as a wonderful game and a thought-provoking statement of intent about the genre it parodies. After all, every fighting game is turn-based if your reflexes are fast enough, right?